Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, Minister DM and DG and officials from the Department of Basic Education. We thank you for the time to attend the briefing. I'm going to ask the Minister to come through to address us without any much waste of time. But before that, I'm going to ask that my colleague Hope please assist us with the sanitizing of the microphone as the Minister makes her way to the stage. Thank you.
Good morning and thank you very much, Chair, and good morning to all those who really honored us with their attention. We want to say this year was a very difficult year for us, and nobody could have anticipated the sudden state of affairs. But eventually we've come to the state where we are. You'll recall that by the time we requested our grade 12s to come back to school, they had lost almost 47 days of their schooling. But through the support of different people, especially with the HOSA Matric program, but also individuals and different groupings of people came to assist us and rally around our children. So as a department, we want to thank the parents for trusting us with their children's safety by sending them back to school, even against opposition from some quarters. But we also want to take this opportunity to thank our teachers who worked tirelessly, some of them 7 days a week, sacrificing their precious family time, teaching and learning to make sure that our learners could recover lost ground. At this point, I also want to acknowledge the fact that during those difficult times, we lost almost 1,493 teachers. We lost a number of our workers. We lost a number of district officials, circuit officials. We also lost one of our colleagues, MEC for Education in the Northern Cape, Jack Mack. And we say, may the souls rest in peace. So on Tuesday the 15th was our last day for the academic year. We hope that all learners in all grades up to 11 have received their reports. And we want to stress that schools are not allowed by law to withhold reports for whatever reason. We continue to receive complaints from parents whose children have not been given reports. This year, if you recall, we did report that we had to trim our curriculum. We had to go into platooning, into rotational teaching, alternative days, alternative weeks, just to adjust to the regime and make sure that we are COVID-19 compliant. The virus also forced us to suspend our enrichment programs like our Spelling Bee, SASK, your moot court, and all different sporting activities. And these challenges also brought into sharp focus the need for us to strengthen our psychosocial support service as a sector. Indeed, we managed to reopen schools through the support of other departments and social parents who operate in the space. The psychological impact of the virus will be felt in some years that we are sure of. We also want to report on our school readiness for 2021. Remind people that schools will reopen on the 25th of January for teachers and learners expected back on the 27th of January. All provinces are finalizing their admissions. District offices will be available to assist parents where the need arises, so that even when we have not opened schools, if there are some delays, parents have not had any confirmation, districts will be ready to assist them. Again, as DBE, we have been monitoring our provinces for state of readiness, Because again, we're still going to open in the face of the pandemic to make sure that we can have a smooth reopening of schools. We've been working with other countries. I've been having virtual meetings with colleagues from Zambia, from Kenya, Rwanda, just to share experiences as a continent on how we can respond to the virus and how we can support each other. So the main focus for 2021 school reopening will be to be able to ensure school readiness for 2021 school calendar, and that we address blockages in time. The 2021 readiness monitoring tool, through provincial one-to-one meetings that we're having virtually with them, has focused on the following areas: health and safety, school admissions, to check where learners have not been returning in numbers where they are and see if we can encourage them to come back to school, the provision of learning and support material, also checking with provinces how they plan to manage the curriculum under the COVID-19 environment. COVID-19 has taught us or has forced us to really frog leap or to fast track our rollout of information, communication and technologies. We're also focused on school nutrition, on infrastructure. We've been meeting weekly under the leadership of the Deputy Minister just to monitor the infrastructure programs, learner and learner transport, safety and psychosocial services. Despite all the difficulties, as a sector, we were very excited when Cabinet gave us almost 300,000 young people to come and assist us in schools. And this is part of the President's Presidential Employment Stimulus Initiative to create 200,000 employment opportunities for education assistants and also 100,000 opportunities for general assistants. This program seeks to address the COVID-19 pandemic disruptions, because your teacher assistants are going to help us in terms of revision and also catching up on what we have lost. And the general assistants will help us also to deal with some of the infrastructure challenges that we have. The 300,000 employment opportunities were targeted at the young people to strengthen our capacity in schools at least until the end of March in 2021. We've already registered more than 65% of these young people. They will work in the areas of ICTs, reading, mathematics, robotics and coding, basically in the areas that we're unable to address because of the coronavirus in 2020. But more than anything, help us to catch up on what we need to or needed to do in order to prepare our learners for the next phase. Because what we've concluded as a sector, but also it's an international trend, that the disruptions of 2020 will need even a longer time frame or time phase to address. We have a 3 years curriculum recovery plan. From 2021, we'll be implementing the recovery actual teaching plan in grades R to 12, and the basis for the recovery is a trimmed curriculum. As I said, we had to trim our curriculum, we had to leave out other topics, but also with the disruptions of rotational teaching, we also had very limited time to be able to even cover that trimmed curriculum. So the unintended learning losses occurred due to extended closure of schools. Remember, some of the learners only came in September. Even when they came in, we were not able to accommodate them fully up to date. So the recovery of these annual teaching plans focus mainly on the core and fundamental content knowledge, on skills, attitudes, and values required in each grade and subject to ensure deep learning and content necessary as opposed to superficial learning. So we had to make sure that we identify with our experts from universities, experts from non-governmental organizations, to say what are the core skills that we have to impart at a certain grade, which are building skills for the next grade. So on the 2022 calendar, we have already published the 22 calendar, and we're proposing a staggered calendar this time. This year, both your coastal and your inland learners are going to open on the same day. But in 2022, because of the requests that have been coming from stakeholders, we have decided to stagger the calendar for 2022. We also had to strengthen our Read to Lead campaign, and we really want to urge communities and parents, because it's been a very difficult year. We've achieved very little as compared to other previous year. On Tuesday, I launched what we call the Presidential Reading Circle. We invited people to join us in that reading circle, because our research tells us that if our children have to improve in reading, which means even ourselves as adults have to start creating a reading nation. So we launched the Reading Coalition under the coordination of the National Education Collaboration Trust. And I'm happy to say that on the 14th of December, we launched a book reading club. The reading club will be coordinated regularly, and we encourage members of the committees to participate, and we'll announce when those dates are. And I can say that it was one of the most beautiful events that one attended on Tuesday. And we'd like South Africans in their numbers to join and participate in this reading club. We're actually even asking the president to host the next reading club. He's giving us his holiday reading material. We'll circulate so that everybody knows what he's reading. And then when we engage in the January reading club, we all have at least read the same 3 books, and we can engage around them. So last week, if you recall again, we unveiled the results of the trends in international mathematics and science, which is TIMSS. And TIMSS is an assessment of the mathematics and science knowledge of the 4th and 8th grade learners around the world. In TIMSS 2019, the achievement means that from 2003 to 2019, South Africa has improved about 104 points, which is for maths, it improved with 102 points. But the long and short of it is that our learners in grade 9 had made, I'll say remarkable, because we're coming from a low base. But we still want them to improve more, and we're going to put more energy. I was quite disappointed when the grade 5 results just stayed almost where they were, which is sending us back to the drawing board to say what are the things that we still need to do more to improve. So as much as we're encouraged by the grade 9 results, which are moving and confirming that indeed we are a system on the rise, but our grade 5 results didn't improve in any way that makes us happy or proud. On matric examinations, they came to the end on the 15th of December. The combined exam, which involved full-time and part-time candidates, started on the 5th of November, if you recall. It involved more than 1 million candidates. It took place in 8,200 exam centers in all provinces. We had to engage about 80,000 invigilators, and our learners had to sit for 216 question papers, which were written, and had to print more than 10 million scripts for these exams. We've already appointed 45,000 examiners who will be marking at 180 marking centers. And as I said, as we reported earlier, the 2020 NSC exams was unprecedented. As a result, the capacity of the system was stretched beyond imagination. And we can say, with the exception of the leakages that happened in the physical science paper and the maths paper, the exams proceeded well. As a sector, we sought to have our candidates, who will recall, to rewrite the leaked papers. We strongly believed that if we do so, this will just restore and maintain and address the lingering questions regarding the integrity, credibility, and the fairness of the NSC exams. But the North Gauteng High Court ruling, we feel, did not help much, because it did not deal with the core issue that we're taking to court, which is the credibility, the integrity, and the fairness of the 2020 exams. As we had communicated before in public, we are going to approach the courts, because our findings are that the High Court findings are in discordant with applicable basic education legislation. There were areas where we found the findings against the department were issues first that we had not raised in the papers, but again were not in line with our education laws. And that's why I would like to go back to correct some of the wrong utterances or wrong findings that we felt that were not in line with the laws of the education laws, but also missed the point of what the whole issue was about. The issue was not about who, which is also not true, who decides about rewrite, which again, the education laws don't pronounce the way the judge pronounced, but the main issue for us was credibility, integrity, and the fairness of exams. But we felt for the peace of mind of the learners, so that we don't keep them hanging or keep them to continue being anxious about the exams, we should agree with the court's decision that there's no rewrite for the 15th and the 17th. We'll see the rest next year. And so the department will going to work to continue with its work. We're going to be marking from the 4th of January. We'll do the standardization. We're scheduled to release the results on the 22nd of February. That for the first time we will be opening
towards the
end of the month, and we are in discussions with universities about that fact, so that our learners are not left out. But there's not much we can do if we have to do our work properly, because we're only going to start marking on the 4th. We have to still go on the 12th of February. We will be presenting irregularities to Umalusi and the Quality Assurance Agency to make an announcement on the integrity and the credibility of exams. And we are scheduled, as I say, to release on the 22nd of February. So in conclusion, I really want to appreciate the sacrifice and hard work displayed by our officials in all levels of the systems, from our provincial education departments, from districts and circuits, but also from DBE in particular, from the national level. So I want to thank you, DG, and your team. I want to thank my colleague, the Deputy Minister, for really hard work throughout the year, and want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a great New Year, and ask people, or just to reconfirm or restate what as Cabinet we want to request South Africans to do, that they have to remember to wear the mask at all times, to sanitize, wash, and keep social distancing, and have a peaceful, quiet Christmas this year. It's in the interest of all of us, but we wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a good year in 2021. Thank you. And it's the 2020.
Thank you so much, Minister. I'm now going to ask Dr. Paulia to make a presentation on the technical aspects of the administration of the examinations, just an update on the work that has taken place. So Dr. Paulia, please ascend to the stage. I'm going to ask Hope again to come through. We're going to be busy today.
Good morning, Minister. Good morning, Deputy Minister. Good morning, Director General, members of the media houses, and good morning to the South African nation. Minister has provided us with a broad overview of the examination processes thus far and what still needs to follow. And my job is to provide you with additional detail in this regard. Minister has provided us with all these statistics just to give us an indication of the magnitude and size of this examination. I think when we addressed the media at the beginning of the examination, Our biggest concern at that stage was the 1 million learners that we had to accommodate, and the fact that we were administering an examination for both senior certificate candidates and NSC candidates. And I think in terms of the numbers, we have coped extremely well. And every candidate that registered for the examination was able to write the 2020 November examination. And these are the figures that Minister has already outlined. And we are now ready to move into the marking phase. And in the marking phase, we're looking at a period of 18 days, which would be very much longer than the normal 10 to 12 days that we have utilized in previous years. In terms of the exam session, it was a 30-day exam session, longer than usual. As Minister mentioned, the exam commenced on the 5th of November 2020, 216 question papers, and our last examination on the 15th of December, when all of us sighed a sigh of relief, was the visual arts, agricultural management practice, computer applications technology, and information technology. Now I need to clarify that computer applications technology and information technology were the rewrite. It was specifically for learners who had experienced one or other technical problems during their first writing of the exam. And in order to make sure that these learners are not disadvantaged, we have a standard feature in terms of our examination timetable where we have a rewrite for CAT and IT. So the CAT and IT has nothing to do with a leaked paper. This gives you a detailed breakdown in terms of the next slide, which is coming up, of the numbers that we had to deal with in terms of each of the examinations or each of the question papers that had to be written. What needs to be understood is that you had over 1 million learners in total, but the numbers that wrote per session will depend on the number that would have registered for that particular question paper. And our larger numbers would be in terms of English first additional language, 599,000, mathematical literacy on the next slide, which is 523,000. And I think our provincial education departments have done extremely well in making sure that these large numbers were appropriately accommodated given all the COVID regulations that had to be adhered to. So the slide presentations give you an indication of the different numbers. I think what is important to note is that we did the best we could to accommodate learners in this particular examinations. Even, Minister, where candidates were incorrectly registered, we made sure that if they pitched up at an examination center, we accommodated them. There were disruptions in terms of protest actions in the Western Cape as well as Gauteng and one or two other provinces. But wherever there were disruptions, I think we can confidently state that every learner was able to write the examination. Candidates who tested positive were allowed to write in isolation, and we expected this to be a major hurdle. But I will give you an indication shortly of the numbers that were tested positive per province, and we were able to accommodate these learners. Even learners that presented symptoms of COVID-19 were also accommodated in this examination. We also went a step further in terms of learners who on the morning of the examination or the night before the examination who took ill and were admitted to hospital. We were able to administer the examination in hospitals in a number of cases. As Minister has mentioned, barring the 2 leaked papers, the examination has proceeded as per plan. Moving on to the next slide, we have the numbers of candidates that tested positive, and we had a total of 715 candidates who tested positive and wrote the 2020 NSC stroke senior certificate examination. One would see that the Eastern Cape numbers were extremely high with 542. But I can assure the South African nation that all these learners were accommodated. They wrote the exams in isolation, and this, I think, was a major achievement for the system, that learners who would have, if we had not allowed them to write the examination, would have missed a year, were now given the opportunity to write the exam. As Minister has indicated, we now move to the critical phase of marking. Writing is critical given the numbers of learners that have to be accommodated at appropriate venues. But marking is possibly the most important aspect, because that's where the actual judgment is made in terms of individual learner performance. And as Minister has mentioned, we have appointed 45,000 markers, and each marker appointment has gone through a stringent process of ensuring that markers that satisfy our criteria will be the markers that are finally appointed. We have 181 marking centers across the country, and they are all ready to commence marking. In fact, in 3 provinces, we've commenced with what we refer to as staggered marking. Now, the reason for staggered marking is, given the large numbers and given the limited number of markers we have in certain subjects, there was a need to start marking earlier. So some of them have started as early as the beginning of December, and they will then continue in January. But what is important is what we refer to as marking standardization meetings. The marking standardization meetings are meetings where we invite representatives from each of the 9 provinces, together with our examining panels, together with the Umalusi moderation panel. A meeting is hosted centrally, and the question paper is interrogated together with the expected answers or the marking guideline. And the purpose of this particular meeting, and we have 144 of these, what we refer to as marking standardization meetings, the purpose of these meetings is to make sure that every question is looked at with a fine eye, to make sure that learners would not have misinterpreted the question. And if learners would have misinterpreted the question, then we need to make sure that the marking guideline accommodates that misinterpretation or a different interpretation to the question. And these meetings are proceeding, and given the COVID-19 regulations, we had what we refer to as a bimodal approach. Modality 1 was a blended or a hybrid mode, where we had our panels together with the Malusi moderators that were at our offices or at a hotel if we could not accommodate them at our offices. But the larger number of the provincial representatives were able to link up via Microsoft Teams. And modality 2 was a totally or a purely virtual mode to all of these meetings. But however, we have picked up in the early stages of our meetings that a few of our examiners tested positive, and on the basis of the advice we got from our health officials, we then decided to now change the modality so that all our meetings are now virtual. So those are the marking standardization meetings, and I can indicate that as at the 10th of December, of the 144 meetings, we've conducted 52, and they are going exceptionally well, and we have 92 meetings that still remain. Obviously, Up to yesterday, we certainly have gone past the 65 mark, and the remaining meetings have decreased. In terms of our marking plan, the next slide gives you an indication of the marking dates, and in the main, marking will start on the 4th of January, and marking will conclude across all provinces by the 22nd of January. However, each province has its own marking dates based on the number of scripts that they have to mark. But the 22nd will be the cutoff, Minister, by when all marking will be completed, and the DBE will be monitoring that process very closely to make sure that the deadline of the 23rd of February is met. Once the marking is completed, and the next critical phase is for marks to be captured onto the integrated examination computer system. And what happens is that while marking is in progress, the capture of marks also begins. And we have a cutoff date of the 21st of January at 6 o'clock, when our computer system will then shut down, and all marks of every learner that has written the examination would now be captured on the system. And that's by the 21st of January at 6 o'clock. We then have to begin preparation for this very critical process, which is regarded as the standardization conducted by Umalusi. The standardization process is a very important process. It's an internationally recognized process whereby the results of the current cohort of candidates are looked at in the context of previous years. So there is statistical data, qualitative data that is looked at to make sure that this group of candidates were not disadvantaged in any way. Now, despite the fact that question papers are moderated internally, externally, and goes through an extensive quality assurance process, the standard of a question paper can only be determined after it's written, and one looks at how learners have performed and compare the current performance to previous cohorts of learners, and that gives you an indication of what the standard is. So the first step in preparation for standardization is to get the standardization data, which means that the marks of all candidates must be presented in a particular format with particular statistical data. And we then present all of this to Umalusi to check the data. And there's double checking, triple checking to make sure that the data is accurately captured, and to also make sure that the statistical analysis is done correctly. Prior to the actual standardization meeting, the DG then leads a delegation where what we refer to as an evidence-based report is presented to Umalusi. The evidence-based report captures what the class of 2020 has been exposed to, not just in the year 2020, but we look at the class of 2020 from grade R. And obviously the focus in terms of the support, the intervention would be on the last 3 years. And this gives Umalusi an excellent account of what to expect in terms of the performance of the class of 2020. So this year, 2020, is going to be exceptionally important, given the fact that we've had COVID-19, there were disruptions, and as Minister indicated, the grade 12 class would have lost 47 teaching days, but those 47 days were recovered, and that can be demonstrated. But all of this evidence is presented to Umalusi prior to the standardization meeting, so that they have the background, the context that would help them in terms of the decisions that will have to be made in terms of whether marks are accepted as is or whether marks need to be adjusted. The DBE will then have its own pre-standardization meeting on the 1st of February in preparation for the standardization, and there's 2 days of intensive deliberation on what are the proposals that we will present per subject to Umalusi. And on the afternoon of the 2nd of February, we then present those proposals to a full sitting of the HEDCOM meeting so that we have their endorsement. And then on the 3rd of Feb is this important standardization meeting. And this year, for the first time, we're going to have 2 standardization meetings, one for the candidates that wrote the senior certificate and the other for the candidates that would have written the examination for the NSC, the National Senior Certificate. Post that meeting, where the important decisions are made regarding whether raw marks are accepted or whether marks need to be adjusted, which is based on educational reasons, those decisions will then have to be captured on the IECS or the Integrated Examination System, so that the final processing of the application of these adjustments to the computer system can now be made. And whatever changes are made, these are checked and double checked by Umalusi together with the State Information Technology Agency. On the 12th of Feb is another important date, and that is the date on which we present to Umalusi a comprehensive report on how the exam was administered, what were the pitfalls, both technical as well as what were the irregularities. Irregularities in terms of group copying, where we may have had imposters or whatever it was that did not comply with the regulations. And based on that meeting, Umalusi will then make a determination on the 15th of February, where they will then address the nation on whether the examinations were free and fair. And obviously at that meeting, the issue of the leaked papers, the investigations that were conducted by the DBE, and those reports would be presented to Umalusi. Once Umalusi gives us the go-ahead that the results have now been approved, we then move to the next phase of generating individual statement of results. And that's a major process, because more than 1 million statement of results must be generated. And finally, the reports will be put together, and the minister will then make the announcement in terms of the performance of the class of 2020 on the 22nd of February in terms of that announcement, and on the 23rd of February will be the announcement regarding the individual MECs that will announce their results in their individual provinces. So, Minister, that is the detail in terms of what lies ahead of us, and all I can say is that the investigations with regard to all irregularities are progressing as per plan. Preparations for marking are on track, and the system is ready to deal with all the end of the year processes, and the results will be released as per schedule. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Polia. I'm going to now ask colleagues in the media to pose questions for the Minister, for the Deputy Minister, as well as the Director General, who are all here to tackle those questions. I'm already seeing 3 hands. I'll start at the back. Please tell us who you are, and then you go forth and ask your questions. I'm saying at the back, I'm referring to you because the 2 questions are in the front line.
I see. Gerard Pretorius from ENCA. Just two questions. In terms of a second wave of COVID, has there been any discussions as to a possibility of schools not opening on time? Is that something that is on the table currently or not? And then I'll come back to my second question. Sorry, I forgot it now. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. We'll come to the front desk.
Linda Mnisi from Newsroom Africa. Minister, just for clarity, you say that you're approaching the courts. What exactly do you mean by that? Are you going to be appealing the matter? And when, if so, how is that going to affect the release of the results? Because you say you're going to be releasing them in February. Secondly, you mentioned that there are a couple of things that you took issue with when it comes to the judgment. And one of those is the judge's pronouncement on who exactly orders a rewrite. But when I remember well, the judge mentioned that there isn't any indication, at least even in your answering affidavits, that the Director General could have taken the decision. In fact, cites the issue around the CEM and yourself being the ones that took the decision. So when you say you took issue with that in particular, what exactly do you mean, given the empowering provisions? And lastly, have you spoken to Umalusi? Have they told you what their stance is with regards to this? Are they going to be certifying these results as credible? You've already told us you're in a position to tell us their stance on the 4th of December when you mentioned the issue of the rewrite. So are you in a position to tell us now what is going to happen? Thank you.
All right. So.
Good morning, Minister. I just want to find out, first of all, with the issue of the matric leaks, so from ENCA, I'd just like to find out with the issue of the matric leaks, paper leaks, is there anybody at this stage, besides the person that has been arrested, that will be held accountable for that? And then you mentioned the issue of the reports, but every year you kind of have the same situation where learners are struggling to get their reports. What is the plan from the department so that this problem actually comes to an end? I've got two more, can I ask?
Please proceed.
Okay, and then the issue of the employment initiative, aren't we going to need more of these people that you're hiring later beyond March of 2021? And have you also quantified the amount of work that you've done this year? And if not so schools can carry on from where they ended in 2021? And the last one, just the dropout rate. Do you know where we're currently sitting as the year comes to an end? Thank you.
All right, that's fine. Any other questions in the house? All right, we'll go to Matikweni who has questions on the WhatsApp line. Please help us.
Thank you, Elijah. We have two questions. The first one is actually three. The first question is from Nazir from Glow TV. They have asked, can the minister say for certain that only 2 question papers, which is maths and science, were leaked? And his second question is, now that the court has ruled that there won't be a rewrite of the 2 question papers, what measures will be taken during the marking to red flag possible culprits that had access to the leaked papers? For example, will higher marks above a certain percentage be compared to the learner's past year mark? And the last question on WhatsApp is from Arthur Goldstruck from Gadget. They have asked, there seems to be more concern with procedure than with the mental well-being of matric students. Did the minister take this into account in the decision that all matrics would need to rewrite the maths exam? Is there recognition of the likelihood that this would have increased the pain of an agonizing year for matrics?
Okay. All right. Thanks for that. Just one more check. No other questions. Okay. Minister, I'm going to ask you to go first. Can she continue from there? She should come here. You said.
I can do it.
All right. I hope please come through.
No, thank you very much for the first question. On the second wave, we had not discussed because it was only declared now during exams, and what we're doing when we're doing preparations for 2021, we made them with the view that we will go into 2020 still with corona around us because the vaccine said to be coming in June. So we have some time now, so we have at least the whole of December, almost the whole of January. So we'll see how things shape up. But the fact that we had not discussed it, but it will definitely inform or will be informed by what the developments are. On the issues, some of the issues, because we're still going to go back to the court around the issues of the leak and other things. And our positions that the very things that he's talking about, things which are in our answering papers. There is no way I could say we've consulted extensively. Who am I consulting with? The DG the first step when there are irregularities, it is work to call headcom. We spoke to teacher unions. The meeting the judge is talking about, it's when I was going to announce. Because after consulting, I felt that it would be correct to go and brief the people that I've consulted on what decisions I've taken. So that meeting is talking about, it was the announcement of the decision. It was not consultation, because consultation had already happened. And those are the things we're saying, probably they had not read our papers fully. And those are the things that are contained in our papers. The status of Umalus, and those are the things that we really think have to be corrected. Because they create a wrong impression as if we don't know what are the rules and laws that govern us. We're not running exams for the first time. We've run exams forever. And the rules about exams are very clear and strict. So there is no way we could have made such a silly example. Now let me not speak. Are you going to allow me to finish? If you want to follow up, you follow up. Otherwise I'm going to answer you whilst you're speaking. And I don't think it is going to be helpful. So allow me to finish. I'm saying there are issues that we've picked up that we're going to take back. In terms of the rewrite, we announced that we have accepted the decision to make sure that we can ease the anxiety, and we didn't even have time. We had just no way not to abide by the decision, even on our side. There was no time. We want to open the year next year, so it's easier for us. What Umalusi does is the next stage. We'll address it there. So we are going to rewrite. There are always instruments and tools that we normally use to detect if there are any problems. Normally we're able to say, to see that the paper leaked in this province, in this circuit, and therefore we can see trends. But here, the maths paper, and that's why we had said it must be rewritten, we don't have a full sense as to the extent of the leak. So we are not sure which papers to target, but we will try at all costs to read it through our system to make sure that we can do that. On matric leaks, who else is arrested? The Hawks are still dealing with the cases. They're picking up lots of information, which I'm not sure if I want to share at this stage. But we will be able to share more information when they allow us to share information. They keep on briefing us, but they are picking up more information than they had before. On the employment, so DM is going to help me. On the employment initiative, or on how much we've been able to cover, we had to trim down in terms of the remaining days. So those who are coming in September, we had to say, what are the core skills if you are in grade 8, which you need at least as grade 8 to be able to build on in grade 9. So the amount that we would have covered is the amount that we had time for. So the students' initiatives or the teacher assistants are going to help us to claw back on some of the areas that we were supposed to have covered, which we have not covered. On reports that are being held back, the law said you should not hold reports back. Even as early as 6 o'clock this morning, there was a parent who was phoning me frantic to say the school is refusing to give them reports because they have to pay 50 rands, and she was told school education is free. What is this 50 rands all about? And when I followed up, I checked who took the decision. It says the governing body had taken a decision that they want to secure their school. Every parent must pay 50 rands. And said, but your governing body has been chosen by you. It has the right to take it. It's fundraising. It's a different thing. They want money to secure the school and do buckling. Why are you not paying or assisting the school board? It says no, it's free and other things. So you have those squabbles at school level, which are not necessarily long. Then I said to her, you have to go back to your school governing board because the school can't keep a report. So we'll have to go and fight a 50 rands battle elsewhere. But the law is saying the following. So the question was, when this thing happens every day, when are we going to stop it? The law says you can't do it. So there's nothing I can do beyond the law. Unless now I have to go and chase different, governing bodies and parents. But it's actually more than anything. It's a provincial responsibility because they run schools. We just make policies, we make laws, tell them what the law is. The implementation is with the provinces. Therefore, if there are difficulties, the provinces have to address them because it's school by school and in different ways. In your private schools, it's a private arrangement. As a parent, you would have gone there. It's like when you buy a car. Unfortunately, where you have agreed with the school that you're going to pay them 10,000 rands. So it's a private arrangement between yourself and the school. On papers that have leaked, we did mention that 3 papers leaked. There was a business study paper. Fortunately, we got information in good time, so we had to use a backup paper. So that's why we're mentioning 2 only, because it's those 2 papers where we didn't replace them. But the business studies paper we replaced, and that's why we're not counting it. It was a new paper. Maths and physical science are the ones. There were lots of hoaxes in between. Each time they write a paper, they say there's a leak, paper 1. We go and verify it's not true, it's not the right paper. So there were lots of hoaxes. So the ones that we could confirm that indeed these were the right papers that had leaked was maths and physical science. But there were lots of hoax, and every time we hear that there's a leak, we quickly verify and check because we have the originals with us and confirm. So in our record, it's only those 3 papers. So dear, ungazongiphendula lo bhuto okhuluma in between mhlawumbe sizonanga kahle uzongitshelela yena because those lo okhuluma khulunywa.
Thank you, Minister, for this opportunity to come and help you. I think you have covered most of the questions. Maybe just to sum up some of the things that you said about the courts, DG, that the message was clear. There is no appeal. That's why we said there will be no rewrite on the 14th and 17th of December 2020. But on some of the issues, like Minister indicated, then we'll go to the courts on those particular issues, because examinations has got credibility issues, quality issues, and it's not only for the examinations and the department, also for the learners themselves, because the candidates, they will be going to universities and wherever they will want to go. They must not carry a stigma at their back. That's why the decision was taken. It addresses even the second question that what are we thinking for the students, the learners? And the majority of the learners, if we can visit the minister's inbox of emails, learners are crying. They want the rewrite because they feel, they say, now we are going to carry a stigma. So there will be those representatives of learners who will not see it the way the other learners are seeing it. But as Minister indicated, investigations will continue, and the investigative marking, that when we mark, we'll be able, like we normally do all the years, that we have a way of dealing with irregularities. Even the leakage is part of irregularities. So when the marking is done, we'll mark and write a report based on what shall have been discovered during marking. Then it's submitted to Umalusi. Then based on that, Umalusi will decide. Not to say that Umalusi has already given a decision that the results won't be recognized. We believe that the effort that is going to be put by our markers and the department will make sure that we leave no stone unturned and give a credible results to Umalusi. Thank you. Thank you. Minister, there was a question on who orders the rewrite, Minister? You are the minister of this department. Anyway, let's not go to the court matters because those are the issues that Minister raised about who orders the rewrite, etc., etc. But Minister is the overall accounting person for the department. That's all what we can say. Overall accounting person.
And the rules allow me.
And even if a child falls into a pit in a place where the minister has never been to, the minister must still account for that child. Same as the examinations. Minister must still account for the examination. So she is the Minister of Basic Education appointed by the President of the Republic of South Africa to look into education in its entirety. Is there anybody to be accountable? After the investigation and the reports, obviously, if there is a foul play inside, Naganjani, there will be accountability from inside. I think the question was looking at that. Yes, even the ones whom the Hawks will identify and our officials will identify will still take accountability, but those inside the system will also account, both in the system as well as in the criminal justice system. On the EEAs, Minister answered very well on reports. We say if there's an agreement of parents through their SGPs and the school to fundraise for a school, that must not involve the child, because it's an agreement of parents and the school to say we are fundraising. So there is no school that is allowed to withhold a report of a learner just because the parents did not honor their commitment to the SGPs. So Minister said it not once, not twice, many a times, that schools are not allowed to withhold reports of children just because of the responsibility of the parent. We know on EEA's, the Employment Initiative, yes, we identify all the areas that those young people that we must appoint must help in. Of course, there will be an instance where we feel as a system we need them beyond. But if there are no resources, there are no resources. We will use what we are using currently. But we believe that by the time they finish their work, they shall have made a positive input and contribution to the system. Yes, some schools will find that on the education assistants, they have 1 or 2, some have 3, some don't have at all. And if this opportunity has been created for them, they will definitely need that assistance, but we'll look within our own resources if we can be able to assist those schools who do not have even one. So, dropout rates. The dropout rate will be able to determine it next year, because some of the parents were afraid to bring their children back to school during the COVID-19. So, yes, some of the learners did not come back. And we believe that as admission was opened, they applied and they are coming back, and it's only next year, February, that will, early January, late January and February will be able to determine exactly the dropout rate, that if those whose parents were afraid that they come back are still at home or what, but we'll be engaging parents through our schools and through the SGPs. Then we'll give a report on the dropout rate next year, February, if some learners are not coming. Minister indicated about the business studies, and you know, people become so proactive and what? They will want to come up with their own news. When they hear that there's a leak, I will also manufacture my own news and say there's another leak, and that will end up confusing us. We believe on what is in the system and what we depict from our officials and some members of the public. Yes, if we get the information, we test it, and if we find that this is a fake news, then we regard it as such. But those that pass the test, that okay, indeed there is a leak, like your math, science, and business studies, were able to do that. Procedure versus well-being. That we are focusing on the procedure and compliance as basic education. That's not true. The aim of basic education is for the child, for the teaching and learning of the child. So the well-being of the child is number one in the basic education sector, is number one. So yes, procedures cannot be not be followed, but the child's well-being is number one. That's why we have all the systems to support the well-being of a child. So, Minister, I think what will happen during marking, I think that one is covered during investigative marking, etc. If there are those that are not covered, DG will come and put more flesh.
But the decision-making processes around the exam, how does it happen?
Okay, thank you, Minister. Yes. Yes, sir. She took my mask.
Yeah. Thank you, Minister, Deputy Minister, and the Program Director, and colleagues from the media. Well, administratively, there is no question about what happened. Let me also start by saying the main answering papers I signed, and I know exactly what was in the answering papers. And the issue about administratively who took the decision, there is no question about that. There are several documents in the answering papers. Number one, who appointed the National Investigation Team. And I want to implore you to go and check that in the answering papers. Number two, who wrote to Umalusi about the 2 leaked papers. Number three, who led the delegation to meet with Umalusi to present the preliminary report. Number four, the letter from Umalusi giving their opinion on how the matter should be dealt with. And I now want to invite you to section C of the regulations. And the court has not made a finding against our regulations, but instead, the court seems to affirm our regulations. And it is not the first time that our regulations were scrutinized in court. In 2016, we went to court and the same regulations were presented there. And I want to read you the regulations. The regulation says, in case of a leaked question paper, the Director General, and then it says basic education, must, in conjunction with Umalusi and the relevant head of assessment body. Now the regulations define also who the head of the assessment body is. Now let me assist. The Director General, together with heads of education in provinces, are heads of assessment bodies. And in taking this action, all of those were part of this. It says, in conjunction. What also surprised us from the court's decision was that the court assumed that Umalusi dictated. And I want to go further and say, it says, decide what action should be taken to ensure credibility of the examination. Not given advice. The regulations are not tentative. There is no prevarication about that you might advise. Say, decide on what action must be taken. In other words, Umalusi also being part of this. You don't wait for the end point and then take a decision. And I applaud the crafters of these regulations because they anticipated unprecedented disaster at the end. And they are saying Umalusi must be involved at that point when the action is to be taken. So if you go and peruse our answering papers, all of this is in there as to who did what and, what action was taken, but by each of the role players indicated here. And this comes from the National Education Policy Act, Section 3, subsection 4. The role of Umalusi, the role of the Director General, they are all in there. And we are surprised that the court even dismissed a body such as the Council of Education Ministers, which is one of the first bodies recognized by a statute, National Education Policy Act, as the body that regulates the development of the policy, but also oversees implementation. There is no way that you'd go through other structures and not go through the Council of Education Ministers. You wouldn't go through the heads of education committee. All of these records were part of our answering papers. How the court chose to see some and not even to consider others, it is still puzzling to us. But we suspect that the court was faced with an onerous task, very complex matter, which a decision had to be made over 24 hours. And we think the court didn't have time to peruse all of these documents and to fully apply its mind to them. Just to add a few points, Minister, in terms of the second wave, indeed, we will be presenting to the Council of Education Ministers in January. We had a workshop of heads of education. We looked at what has been happening in Europe and elsewhere. We have some proposals that we want to take to the Council of Education Ministers. The minister indicated in the speech that we met with Zimbabwe. We are meeting with Namibia. We'll be meeting with Kenya and Rwanda. So we're learning from Africa. We're also learning from other parts of the world as to how do they deal with similar situations of either the rising infections or even the second wave. So the stance of Umalusi, unfortunately, we cannot second guess Umalusi. We need to wait for when Umalusi would be pronouncing on the results, and then we'll then hear what Umalusi is going to say. Dr. Polia indicated what we are expected to do. We're going to be presenting all these documents that he referred to, the evidence-based report, the report on the irregularities, and all the things that he has mentioned. And then the leaked papers. Let me also indicate that last time when the minister hosted a press briefing, we confirmed that the source of the leak was the printing company in Gauteng. We can now tell you that the second source of the leak is government printers. Government printers. The physical science full paper was leaked from government printers. The detail of that, we leave it for the hawks, as the minister said. It's the second source. The whole question paper leaked from government printers, confirming what we said in court, that whilst we have seen some questions from some social media, we believe that the leak was wider than what we thought. And the ongoing daily developments seem to confirm what we presented in court. And then the Deputy Minister also addressed the issue of the dropout rate. The Deputy Minister is right. In our weekly meetings with provinces, we picked up that overall about 15% of learners could not be accounted for in the system. 15% of learners could not be accounted for in the system. Grade 12 learners had the highest attendance rate, close to 100%. Grade 12 learners, the class of 2020. But the other lower grades accounted to the 15%. But as the Deputy Minister correctly pointed out, it's too soon to think that that's the number of learners who dropped out of the system, because they could come back come reopening of schools next year. And then the Deputy Minister also covered the issue of measures taken during marking. Well, Dr. Polia indicated that Mpumalanga started staggered marking. We were there, visited the center. They've started where there's some suspicion about marks that are not in keeping with the trend. The usual investigative marking happens, and the statistical comparison also would happen there. But for an irregularity of the magnitude of Maths Paper 2 and Physical Science Paper 2, investigative marking and statistical analysis comparison is not always useful. Is most useful in group copying, and Dr. Polia will tell you that. But as part of marking, we're still going to use that during marking to follow this up. The reason why CM decided that we shouldn't even appeal the court decision is because of the impact of this mentally, psychologically and otherwise it would have on learners. Sorry. And I think Deputy Minister covered that extensively well. So, Minister, I'm sure I've tried to contribute. Thank you very much.
Thank you, DG. Thank you, Minister and DM. Can we take the last round of questions, if there's any? Show of hands, the same hands again. Okay, I'll start where I started last time. Gerard?
Minister, Gerard again from ENCA. If it's possible, if you can take us through the enrollment, the figures that you have had and the percentage that has been processed currently. There has been in previous years a lot of problems with the online system, especially for grade 1s and grade 8s. has that been sorted out? And just to give us a couple of figures as which you have up to date. Thank you.
All right, great stuff. Tsaka?
Minister, I just want to know the issue of the automatic progression for foundation phase. What's happening with that? When is it starting? And what can parents expect?
All right, Linda?
It's Linda Missy again. Minister, you mentioned the issue around, I want to go back to the previous issue. You mentioned that the court referred to the document where you were consulting and not necessarily the ones that they were supposed to look at. But if I remember correctly, you were asked to submit records of the meeting where this decision was taken. Are you saying the court ignored those minutes and looked at the minutes of the briefing? Because here in the judgment it refers to the records of the decision to rewrite. So I just want clarity so that it does not look like we're doing a back and forth.
All right. Any questions on the WhatsApp, Motshekga?
No questions as yet.
Okay, great stuff. We'll take this as the last round, so I'm going to ask the Minister to go first. Thank you, Minister.
Okay. In terms of the exact numbers that we expect in terms of learner enrollment, the last report we received was that we were expecting about 300,000 new learners into the system. But I don't have the breakdown with me, so I want to check with the DG. And in your easier provinces like your Eastern Cape and other things, where they're not even using your ICT or using your yeah, where registration just happens walking to the school, it's not a big problem. It will be in your Durban area where they will not have completed your Gauteng because of in-migration, Western Cape, and parts of Limpopo like in Polokwane where they still have outstanding issues. But I mean, we could share the information because we have the information, but I didn't bring the breakdown in terms of province. I just have this overall picture that we're expecting 300,000 new learners into the system. The progression of grade 1 learners, our view as the sector, which is an international practice, that our repetition rates are too high. It just is an indication that something is not, something's just not right. A child in grade 1, it's either they didn't get enough support, and to get them, there's evidence that to get children to repeat does not necessarily improve their performance. What will improve their performance is support. So that if you find a learner with difficulties, rather than make them repeat, do the same thing again, which they had not been able to do in the previous year, does not improve their performance. It will be with your older learners who either play truancy, don't come to school, don't do, where you could say they need to repeat to be able to do the work all over again. But a grade 1 learner or your foundation phase learners aren't supposed to repeat, but should be supported where you have identified difficulties. So the policy was supposed to kick off this year, is it not so already?
Next year.
Next year?
Next year,
2021.
Yeah.
So we had to prepare the system on remediation where they identify difficulties rather than get young people children to repeat grades. That's the one. On the papers, I thought DG had answered, but let me repeat it. The judge, so maybe we're making references to different matters. He's referring to the fact that I consulted 15 minutes before the announcement. And I'm saying it's not true. That 15 minutes was to go and brief the people we had consulted before. So we had consulted for a long time. We had spoken to parents. We had spoken through the DG. Actually, he was leading the consultations. We had spoken to teacher unions. I've spoken to provinces and all the people. And then he says, I didn't. What my consultation was inadequate was it was 15 minutes before announcement. That was not consultation. That's the point I'm making. Consultation would have occurred before. But because we had consulted people, I thought it would be rude for them to hear a decision on a matter they've been consulted on without giving them the privilege or the opportunity of hearing first what the decision is on the basis of the consultations. And that's the part I'm contesting, to say that 15 minutes briefing was not consultation. It was just to inform people that we had consulted, that finally this is a decision we're going to announce in the next 15 minutes. So I hope.
Grade 1 and 8 placement.
Okay, here are the figures. I didn't have them with me. So I can quickly run with the different provinces, and we can share this information through Elijah. In the Eastern Cape, for instance, for grade 1, they're expecting more than 101,000 learners. Grade 1. They have not as yet placed about 4,497. On grade 8, they expect 79,715. They have placed all of them. In the Free State, it's 28,000 grade 1. They have still not placed 2,842. Grade 8, they have placed all of them. It's a long list. In Gauteng, for grade 1, they're expecting 70,000. They've not placed 34,000. On grade 8, they say they've placed all of them. They didn't give us statistics of unplaced grade 8s. KZN, grade 1, they're expecting 150,000. They've still not been able to place 26,500. And the grade 8, they're expecting 154,472. In Limpopo, it's 74,000 that they have placed. They've still not found places for 717. And I can tell you where they've not placed, it's in your urban areas where there have been other new informal settlements or your areas of growth, but not your deep rural. So grade 8, 154, or it's 72,000. And then in Mpumalanga, they were supposed to place 58,000 grade 1s. They still need to find places for 5,228. And then for grade 8 in Mpumalanga, it's 75,749. In Northern Cape, they say the placement will only start later in November, and they have an approved management plan. They have not given us exactly how many learners they've placed from those who had applied for them. In Western Cape, they're expecting 12,574. In Northern Cape, learners, they've not placed 1,276. For grade 8, they're expecting 16,237. In Western Cape, it's 20,000 learners that they have to place. They've not been able to place 5,537. So our main challenge really is around your grade 1s, because the planning is not quite easy, because we don't know very well what to expect. Whereas in grade 8 will be learners who have been in the system in a way. And the difficulties that are there, one is parents' choices. The second one is late applications, but again is parents' preferences. That is also delaying the confirmation. The saying Limpopo is falsifying of admission documents, so you have to find out that it's fraudulent information by parents. People say we stay here because we have to first take children around the area. Then they'll bring wrong addresses. When you verify, you find that these people don't stay. They're not the first group that has to be admitted, because the first preference has to be given to children around the area. In other areas, they say it's infrastructure challenges in Mpumalanga and overcrowding. In Northwest, they say it's undocumented learners, incomplete application forms, and migration patterns where there are always new informal settlements. In the Western Cape, they say there are challenges. It's in migration, it's demand for schools of choice, and inadequate funding and supply for additional learners, where you find that especially provinces like Gauteng and Western Cape, where there's lots of in-migration, their budgets are determined 3 years ahead. So if there's in-migration in between, it affects their budget, so they're able to provide adequately for new arrivals who are not part of the 3-year budget cycle. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Minister. I think that has brought the media briefing to an end. We appreciate the support from members of the media. There's been a very difficult year, as the Minister indicated, and we are happy once again to have had you today to help us disseminate information to the public so that they can use it for decision making. We really appreciate that, and let's keep engaging. We know it doesn't end here. We have WhatsApp groups where we engage with you. We have made information available. We've just shared as well the document the media was reading from. It was a presentation to the Portfolio Committee on the state of readiness for next year with all those details. So you can get it from us. Just send a message as you always do. Thank you so much, Minister, DM, and DG, as well as Dr. Polia, and everyone else. Please travel safely, and let's keep wearing our masks. Thank you.